Please stand by. Our webinar will begin shortly.
Okay.
Please stand by. Today's program will begin shortly. Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to take the time to thank everyone for joining us this afternoon. My name is Christopher Sutton. I'm the moderator for our webinar today.
Oh.
We are having a few technical difficulties, but we are ready to begin now. Our panelist today was just able to make sure his video cameras was working. As you know, we're using the Zoom platform today, and Zoom has many accessibility features to enable us to have accessible meeting. At this time, I'd like you to take short attention to the next slide, where you'll be able to see the functions. To use the closed caption button, please click on the CC function, which will enable you to turn on the closed captions. To use the chat function, click on the chat function, where you can send a message to the panelist or all attendees. At the end of our presentation today, you will be able to ask the moderator, myself, questions and answers to enable you to ask questions from our panelists today. Please note that this session is being streamed live on the Canadian Hard of Hearing Association Facebook page. You can see it on our Facebook page at CHHA National. Please feel free to share it with anyone that may have not managed to register today or able to attend. Before we start this session, I'd also like to remind you that this session is being recorded for future playback. It will be featured on a CHHA website at a later date, so you'll be able to view it at any time. This is an interactive session. If you have any questions, you can either ask them in the question and answer box at the bottom of the screen, or you can send them to the email events@chhha.ca, and they'll be answered throughout the webinar. My name is Christopher Sutton. I'll be moderator today, session, and I have the pleasure to introduce you to our speaker, Willem Maessen. William will be discussing hearing and the ear, focusing on hearing loss, dementia, and other issues associated with hearing loss, including both auditory and non-auditory. Willem will describe potential solutions for your hearing loss problems and introduce different hearing aids and speak about remote program as a solution in today's complex situation. Willem has been with ReSound Canada since 2016 as a Field Training Audiologist and Territory Sales Manager. He received his M.Sc in Audiology from Dalhousie University and worked in private practice for several years before joining ReSound. When he's not working, he spends time outdoors and is a music enthusiast. Thank you, Ted, for attending us today. And now we're going to start sharing your screen and your video and audio at this time.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Christopher, for such a warm introduction. I will share my screen here. And I hope that you're able to see the beginning of today's talk. And I want to welcome everybody today. So, as Christopher said, my name is Willem, and I am an audiologist with GN ReSound. And I've been with the company now for about 4 years. A lot of my job is done with educating about hearing aids and our software, and I get to go into various hearing clinics, but I also get to talk to school groups as well as the public, which I love doing. And today we're going to focus in on hearing and hearing loss, and we're going to do it through the lens of our patient, Robert. This is Robert. He is retired just last year, and he's noticing that it's a little bit tougher to hear in background noise than it used to be. He's finding that eating and socializing in restaurants with his family and friends are not as enjoyable as it once was. Additionally, his wife and his kids have started to nag him about his hearing difficulties, including how he likes to set the TV incredibly loud and how the volume on the music from the stereo is way too high. He hates it when they seem to yell at him and he has to ask them to repeat. Robert has a high frequency hearing loss, and one of the telltale signs of this hearing loss is his inability to hear and understand speech in a noisy environment. Because of the slow onset and progression of most hearing losses, adults with hearing loss are often slow to recognize and acknowledge it. When they do, they consider it to be a normal part of aging, nothing that warrants their attention. As an audiologist, I'm not surprised to hear that the spouses or significant others become frustrated and often are the first ones to acknowledge the hearing loss well before the patient does. So what we want to do today is I want to make sure that we all understand hearing loss. And let's take a little closer look at a diagram of the ear. The ear is really divided into 3 main parts. There is the outer ear, which is what we can see on the sides of our heads. The outer ear has something called the pinna, and then it leads into the ear canal. The ear canal is able to channel all sound towards the middle ear structures. The middle ear is comprised of your eardrum or tympanic membrane, as well as the 3 smallest bones in the entire body, the ossicles, called the stapes, malleus, and incus, or malleus, incus, stapes, the hammer, anvil, and stirrup. The eardrum and these ossicles form a lever system to take the sound waves that travel down your ear canal and transfer them to the inner ear structures. The inner ear has a snail-shaped organ called the cochlea. This is a bony structure completely filled with fluid that also has a series of loops connected to them. The cochlea is very important for transducing sound from a mechanical vibration into an electrical signal that then goes up the ear, the auditory nerve, to the brain. Those three loops are incredibly important when it comes to your balance functions. I have a short video, and let's see if it'll play. I apologize, the video tour of the ear doesn't seem to be playing for us, but it would just take us through our auditory pathway. Most importantly, when we get to the cochlea, we can, if we were to unroll that spiral-shaped organ, we would see that it's structured kind of like a piano, where it's laid out according to the different tones or the different frequencies that we are able to hear. And that's similar to how audiologists and hearing instrument specialists would test your hearing. It's laid out in a tonotopic way. Here I have a picture of an audiogram. And when we test hearing, what we do is we play different beep sounds at different volumes, and then test where, and try to figure out where you can first respond to each of those different beeps. As we change the volume, we mark down where you can detect those sounds, and if all of the thresholds are near the top of the graph, that would be considered to be within the normal range of hearing. As you need to turn the dial up and make those sounds a little bit louder each time, if we have to make it a little bit louder, before you first detect it, it's considered a mild hearing loss. Coming through, it's then more of a moderate hearing loss. As the sounds need to be made louder and louder, we enter the world of a severe and a profound hearing loss. On the audiogram, you can also see that typical speech sounds have a place where they're normally heard in terms of how loud and what frequency they're presented with. And we're going to be able to see that there are some implications for how different speech sounds are set up across the ear. So here we have a picture of how a potential hearing loss might affect a patient who's trying to hear. Their audiometric thresholds are on the left. And what we can see in this example is that this configuration of hearing loss, first off, is typically not very common. Having more of a low frequency sound from the audiogram picture before, that's where a lot of the vowel information lies. So this patient, if they're presented with that word on the right, they might miss out on some of those important vowel information. Does anybody know what this word is? If you guess newspaper, you'd be correct. As it turns out, the vowel sounds aren't supplying this word with as much meaning as some of these consonants do. It's not terribly difficult to have guessed that it was the word newspaper. However, if we have somebody now that has more of a high frequency loss, we can see how important those high frequency consonant sounds are in terms of overall communication and understanding. With a high frequency hearing loss where we're missing some of those high frequency sounds, what kind of word is this patient trying to listen to? This one's a bit harder. The word is orangutan. And we can try one more. Again, if you have a high frequency hearing loss, you're missing out on some of those consonant sounds, and you may not be able to accurately hear what's being said. You can hear that there's a word, but a lot of the clarity tends to be missing. Orange juice, and it gets filled in as such. Looking at these different examples, we can see how different types of hearing loss will affect people in different ways. And when you're missing out on either low frequency, mid, or high frequency sounds, your communication ability can be impacted, and it can become increasingly more difficult, especially with more severe losses and especially with more high frequency hearing losses. Hearing loss can affect just about anybody at any age. Today, about 2 out of every 2 to 3 out of every 1,000 children born in North America have a detectable hearing loss. Even babies can be born with a hearing loss in one or both ears. Some rare cases, this could be attributed to a mother experiencing a serious illness while present, or it could be part of a genetic or familial hearing loss. Something more common is called presbycusis, which is hearing loss as a result of aging, which is probably the most common cause of sensory neural hearing loss that we experience. Noise, as you can see from some of these pictures, whether it's loud music or using loud machinery or driving a motorcycle, noise can have a big impact on your hearing loss, where it can cause a permanent damage to the little cells that are inside of your cochlea, the so-called hair cells. Whether it's through a hobby or whether it's through work, consistent exposure to loud noise can lead to long-lasting damage. I apologize, this slide doesn't seem to be visual, but what it's showing is that there are some statistics about hearing loss. Today, hearing loss affects about 360 million people worldwide, or about 5% of the global population. Once you reach up to about 65 years of age or more, it affects about 1/3 of the population. In Canada, it has been shown that about 1 in 5 Canadians aged 20 to 79 have a hearing loss, or an estimated 4.6 million adults. There is a large disparity between the amount of people that report hearing loss and that when it's shown, such that hearing loss rises sharply over age. And what we're seeing is that there's going to be more people affected by hearing loss too, as the world continues to age. One potential side effect of hearing loss is tinnitus. Tinnitus can be incredibly distressing and aggravating. And this is the result of the ring. Can be presenting as a ringing or a buzzing sound. It can be with crickets in the ear, could sound like roaring, can even sound like music. Tinnitus is incredibly common and in itself is not a disease, but rather a symptom of other things going on. While there may not be a cure for tinnitus today, there are certainly therapy options, such as providing more education, seeking out relaxation techniques, or avoiding really quiet places by having sound stimulation through whether it be a fan or some music or a sound generator. Another potential impact of hearing loss is when you have absolutely no audiometric responses. You can get to a point where the hearing becomes so bad that even wearing a hearing aid does not provide any help. And there are different strategies that people can use. Certainly, you can use non-auditory strategies, visual communication, lip reading, sign language, text. But there are technologies today like cochlear implants that allow electrical stimulation, direct stimulation of the auditory nerve, which is able to restore hearing in people that are profoundly deaf. A lot of issues with hearing loss are related to communication, and communication is incredibly important to stay in touch with people, as we know. But having more of a difficulty hearing is not the only impact of hearing loss. And there is more and more evidence coming out that there are other things going on with hearing loss. The impact can vary tremendously depending on many variables, such as the severity of the loss, the age of onset, the communication needs, personality. However, we do know that having a hearing loss is linked with frustration and fatigue, depression, anxiety, and even isolation. We know, certainly, and we hear anecdotal evidence of this in the clinic, of our patients sharing stories, how they're not able to go out and do what they once enjoyed as much. People with hearing loss may feel embarrassed. They may drop out of groups that they once belonged to because they feel that participation is too difficult. Maybe church groups and services they suffer through in silence, only understanding part of what's been said. There's good empirical data that shows that there is huge impact to people. More recently, within the past 5 years, there's been further studies that have found very similar results that are especially concerning to women. As well, all older people with hearing loss were found to have a high self-reported rate of depression and social isolation. Women were between 60 and 69, statistically significant. They were more profoundly affected by their untreated hearing loss. There's a well-established tie between hearing loss and isolation. In Robert's story at the very beginning today, he was gradually moving himself from the situations that were challenging and frustrating and embarrassing for him, not participating as much as he once was. And when you start to remove yourself from the social situation that once brought you joy, you cut yourself off from your social support and you can become lonely. No man is an island. To varying degrees, the human race is a social species. I feel that in a really big way today during the quarantine, where I'm not able to interact with people as I normally would. Loneliness is a well-established risk factor for cognitive decline. So perhaps hearing loss and cognitive decline are associated because of the, quote, if you don't use it, you lose it philosophy. You need to be participating and keeping your brain active, just like a muscle, or it perhaps could atrophy, ultimately leading to some cognitive decline. Some other aspects or other things that are linked to hearing loss. People with a hearing loss are more likely to fall. There are studies that show that people with a hearing loss are about 3 times more likely to fall for every 25 dB of hearing loss. 15 to 20% result in a significant injury, and falls are the #1 cause of hospital admissions by far. I believe some or all of us may know someone who's had a serious fall and then struggled to reclaim their quality of life and their independence. It's no small thing to suffer a fall, as anybody over the age of 40 could attest to. So what are some of the reasons? There's various theories about what it could be. But again, due to reduced attention, which goes to the idea cognitive load, there's an overall lack of environmental awareness, perhaps due to unmeasured factors such as undiagnosed problem in the balance system that's perhaps coexisting with a hearing loss. The National Health and Nutrition and Examination Survey of 2001-2004 in the US had information that was collected since the 70s, where over 2,000 participants involved between the ages of 40 to 69, and they were asked, have you fallen during the past year? There were control factors like cardiovascular disease and vestibular function that were considered, and it was found that people with 25 dB, which is considered a mild hearing loss, were 3 times more likely to have a history of falling. Each additional 10 dB of hearing loss increased the likelihood of falling by 1.4%. So in summary, hearing impaired individuals are more likely to have a fall due to cognitive overload and compromised brain resources, which makes it difficult to maintain balance while straining to hear and process auditory information. There have been studies that have shown a direct relationship between hearing health and a healthy cardiovascular system. In fact, the ear is so sensitive to blood flow that some researchers even call it the ear a window to the heart. The ear can be used in predicting cardiovascular disease. And what has been found is that the presence or the decline in low frequency hearing specifically is a strong predictor of your cardiovascular health. There are some people that believe that when an audiologist measures changes to low frequency hearing, that there should be a referral to a doctor to make sure that the cardiovascular system is okay. Something else that has been linked with hearing loss is diabetes. Hearing loss is about twice as common in adults with type 2 diabetes compared to those who do not have the disease. While patients may have normal hearing at the onset of the disease, they're more likely to suffer a progressive hearing loss. Postmortem studies of diabetic patients have shown evidence that diabetes may lead to sensory neural hearing loss by damaging the nerves and the blood vessels of the inner ear due to pathological changes associated with the condition and nutrients available in the blood. If you suffer from a progressive loss and place yourself at risk again for depression and isolation, we can see these things appearing in a cognitive decline. When you look through the literature, you very quickly see that loneliness, isolation, and depression can often be the result of a hearing loss, as well as often being associated with other healthy conditions. The comorbidity is the presence of multiple chronic diseases within a patient, and their interactions can cause these illnesses to affect the course and prognosis of both diseases. When you're having trouble hearing, following conversation, and you withdraw, can lead certainly to the feeling of loneliness. There is mounting evidence right now showing a relationship between hearing loss and cognitive decline. When you have a hearing loss, you're not just sitting at home, and a hearing loss has a very real physical effect on your brain. There are cognitive impairments, rather, in today's world. To our generation is what cancer was to the generation of the 1900s. Johns Hopkins University has a researcher named Frank Lin who's been conducting various tests that look at people with hearing loss and their cognitive abilities. And it's been shown that there's a strong correlation between hearing loss and the risk of developing dementia. On average, people with a hearing loss are more likely to develop cognitive problems sooner than those who do not have a hearing loss. They used medical imaging studies to look at patients with hearing loss, and there was a noticeable shrinking of the brain volume compared to patients without a hearing loss. A different study compared the brains of people with and without a hearing loss, which revealed that less of the brain is being used when there is a hearing loss involved, as well as finally showing through MRI studies using 126 participants over 10 years that there was accelerated shrinkage of the brain due to the hearing loss. The actual gray matter, the gray tissue, and the structures responsible for processing sound and speech were shrinking. This study by Frank Lin is part of the Baltimore longitude study of Aging, published in almost 10 years ago now, in 2011. And it showed that as hearing loss got worse, the risk for dementia increased. People with a mild hearing loss were at almost 2 times at risk of developing dementia. People with a moderate hearing loss were up to 3 times more likely to develop dementia, and those with a severe or profound hearing loss were almost 5 times as likely to develop dementia. This isn't to say that somebody with a hearing loss will develop dementia. It's not a causation, but this correlation has been shown, and it was adjusted by controlling for all kinds of factors such as age and sex, education, smoking, and it showed still this correlation. So why might it be? Why might it be that there is this relationship between hearing loss and cognitive decline? Well, with a hearing impairment, you could be, you're finding that you're using more of your attention, more of your cognitive load goes into following the conversation, and your cognitive load increases, resulting in less of your brain resources being allocated to other functions. Physical changes to your brain and your auditory system in your brain with that shrinkage in gray matter. Finally, reduced social engagement has been shown as well to lead towards impaired cognitive function and dementia, and we've seen reduced social engagement in those with a hearing impairment. So there may not be one cause or one reason, but a multitude of factors that lead from hearing loss towards impaired cognition. Finally, another factor here of hearing loss or impact of hearing loss is that those with untreated hearing loss tend to be poorer drivers, where significantly poorer driving skills in the presence of distractors was found with those with a hearing loss. Hearing loss can have a huge impact on people's health and well-being. Most people, I believe, realize that hearing loss can affect communication, but as we've seen today, it can have effects well beyond communication, and studies have shown the correlation between hearing loss and cardiovascular health, diabetes, withdrawal, social isolation, falling, embarrassment, strains on relationship, and cognition and dementia. We've talked a fair amount today about the negative impact of hearing loss and the quality of your life. And it's possible that you feel overwhelmed or afraid, but certainly there is hope. There are many strategies that people with hearing loss use to improve the quality of their life. First and foremost, advocating for yourself and asking people to repeat or telling people that you have a hearing loss. Asking people to speak more clearly, slowly, to measure the cadence of their speech. Reducing distractions or background information if possible. People with a hearing loss, it's important to get it tested because there can be solutions beyond strategies such as trying out hearing aids. In 2017, the Cochrane Review, which does a systematic review of healthcare research, analyzed the evidence from 5 studies involving hundreds of people with hearing loss. The key findings from these studies showed that hearing aids improved the ability in participants to take part in everyday situations. Hearing aids improved their physical, social, emotional, and mental well-being. By introducing hearing aids into your life, you're taking a positive and proactive step towards increasing your quality of life. You increase your likelihood of staving off social isolation and depression that are at the root of so many other health issues and challenges. And you certainly make yourself more aware of your environment, and perhaps you'd be less likely to fall or become a safer driver. The impact of hearing aids. Hearing aids have been shown by a study by Rumala and his group that even using hearing aids for 30 days may reduce your risk of falling. And it could possibly be that the brain is using some sound cues to help orient yourself in space, much like how we use visual cues for orienting with landmarks. Another group showed that for those diagnosed with major depressive disorder was significantly lower for those wearing hearing aids than those who didn't wear hearing aids. Another group showed a positive effect on hearing aids where it reduced depression, where the depression in the patients as well as the amount of caregiver burden was reduced during a 6-month hearing aid trial. Their mental health and social function scores were improved. Another group showed a significant decrease in the perception of loneliness, and this happened after only a short period of using hearing instruments for only a month or two. There can be a positive impact on cognition, where which is independent of these social isolation and depression problems, where hearing aid users were less likely to say that they have little interest or less pleasure in something. People that have hearing aids, less likely to feel depressed or hopeless, and they're less likely to report no hearing difficulty. Finally, people with hearing aids tend to be less forgetful in the past year than those that don't have hearing aids. The auditory system is incredibly plastic, and our brain is able to change well into old age. And hearing aid use could impact that model that we saw earlier, where we saw how hearing loss can affect our brain chemistry. So if we come back to our patient Robert and see how he's doing, remember, he's recently retired. He's struggling and not quite enjoying the events that he used to. He's starting to think of reasons to stay home, but he's compelled to seek some help through the support of his family. And he goes for a hearing test where he has his hearing evaluated. The audiogram is explained to him, and the impact of his high frequency hearing loss on communication is explained. The hearing care professional will then be able to make a recommendation to him and talk about taking into his account all of Robert's unique needs and provide a solution that works for Robert. The way that I talk at ReSound about hearing aids is not just as a hearing aid in isolation, but rather as part of this wireless ecosystem where our hearing aids today, they have great noise reduction and feedback reduction algorithms. We are able to connect with other devices, such as people that would wear a cochlear implant on one ear and a hearing aid on another ear and have a bimodal solution. There's a number of accessories that can be used today to improve your communication or to hear things like television or the telephone more easily. There's direct connection to apps and smartphones. There's rechargeable products, and there's also means of interacting with our patients remotely today through teleaudiology services. Hearing aids today sound more natural, they sound richer, and they're able to communicate more effectively with other devices due to changes that continue to take place within the hearing industry. There are little products that can be very discreet that go inside your ear with a little tiny wire, and then the body of the hearing aid sits up on top. They're very small, they look nice, they're comfortable, and they can fit a wide range of hearing losses. This type of product, this receiver in the ear hearing aid, can even be rechargeable, where you can put this product inside of a charger like I have pictured here. And then these hearing aids come out. They can last for 30 hours every day upon a full charge. This charger is portable, so you can take it with you if you go to the cottage or if you go camping or if there's a power outage at home from a storm. There are hearing aids to accommodate people with more severe hearing losses. These are power behind the ear hearing aids. They come in different sizes to accommodate different types of hearing losses. There are, of course, custom hearing aids. These hearing aids have a mold that's taken of your ear so that it specifically fits your ear canal geometry and can provide you with all of the hearing aid benefits with something that just slips right inside of your ear, nothing up behind your ear. Accessories allow you to broaden what we can do in terms of communication with that wireless ecosystem. There are products that allow you to hear people more easily, whether it's in a noisy environment or at a distance, such as the use of micro-mic or multi-mic, or you may have heard of FM systems that some companies can provide. There's phone clip solutions that allow you to hear your telephone more easily or TV more clearly with a TV box. And then there are remote control options that allow you to make adjustments to your hearing aids. A lot of hearing aids these days have direct connection to Apple products as well as Android products, where things like phone calls, music, and video can be streamed directly into your ears. Hearing aids today are like mini wireless high fidelity headsets that go inside. This period over the past couple months, with all that's been happening in the world with COVID-19 and self-isolation, has really brought the idea of teleaudiology and remote programming to the forefront of the industry. My company, ReSound, has a teleaudiology solution called ReSound Assist, where we have multiple ways to provide assistance at a distance. Live assistance works kind of like a FaceTime call, where you have a scheduled appointment with your hearing care professional and they connect you with video, connecting your hearing aids remotely through the internet to their software to make adjustments. Remote fine-tuning works instead of as a scheduled appointment. It's up to you, and you can fill out a form when it's convenient to you and send the results of the form through an app to your hearing care professional, where they are able to then make adjustments and send it back to you. Finally, hearing aids these days are basically mini computers, and like my computer or my cell phone, every now and then you need to have a software update. And these software updates would normally involve a scheduled appointment where you have to connect the hearing aids to a computer in the office. But today's world, ReSound is able to send our software updates directly to our patients through our apps. Teleaudiology, ReSound Assist, is all done through something called the cloud. The cloud are servers that allow you to store your information, not just on your computer, but in a network of computers where you're able to access your information on any device that has an internet connection. Our patients are able to use their app from their hearing aids to make the requests or do their scheduled live assistance calls, and your hearing care professional will be able to use their software to do your adjustments remotely. It's certainly not something that is required wearing a hearing aid today, but it's something that's been added to provide more flexibility and benefit for everyone. Hearing aids come in a variety of styles, looks, and powers, as well as wireless communication to accommodate different people, different lifestyles, and different hearing needs. At the end of the day, ReSound is a hearing company, and we use the signal process, we use the information that we know about the human ear, about the brain, to deliver a sound that is as natural as possible for our patients. I'm going to skip back to the screen so I can see if there are any questions, and in the last few minutes, we're able to go through this. And
thank you for that excellent presentation. It was extremely informative, and I think people are definitely have learned a lot. I have a couple of questions I've seen on the Q&A and the chat box, but if everyone can put it in the Q&A function, that is preferred. The first question I have is from an individual asking, are these facts and correlations for late onset of hearing loss? What about children born deaf or individuals that use ASL for communication?
So in terms of all of the other like associated factors about hearing loss? Like, is the question asking things like falling and dementia impacting those who acquire hearing loss in life? So what about those who are born with a hearing loss? Is that the question?
Yes.
Yeah. I'm not sure, because I think that there needs to be future studies into these kinds of questions. The correlation that we're understanding more and more about right now, oh, perfect, are following adults that are acquiring hearing loss later in life. So I don't know if that's been shown what happens for people that are born with a hearing loss.
Thank you. Another question I have from the audience. Is, I have several of them.
Okay.
One is, how often should someone check their hearing?
How often should someone check their hearing is a great question. We recommend getting your hearing loss or your hearing tested about once a year, once you've established a baseline. Certainly, if you are finding that you're having any communication difficulties, it's more difficult in background noise, or you're finding you're missing out on what people are saying, I would get my hearing checked at a hearing clinic. Or if you notice any sudden changes to your hearing loss, it's important to get that checked out right away. But once you kind of have established there is a baseline hearing loss, having an annual test is going to be, it's like going to a dentist once a year.
Thank you for that. I have a number of other questions. Another question is, the studies about cognitive decline in hearing loss, do they differentiate between those that have late onset hearing loss versus those who have hearing loss earlier in life?
Going back to that study, let me find my slide here. So what they did is they had a huge pool of people involved in this Baltimore longitudinal study of aging, and they underwent audiometric testing as well as cognitive testing at the start of the study, and all the participants were dementia-free at the beginning of the study. And the hearing loss was monitored. Some people had hearing loss at the study and some developed hearing loss throughout the study. I don't know that it breaks it down in terms of early onset or later onset hearing loss in this study.
I'm just conscious of the time, so we'll ask two more questions.
Okay.
One question is, I'll combine two of them actually. One asked, do they have telecoils in them? I'm assuming it was the hearing aids you were showing. And also, in regards, are the Android functions equivalent to the Apple functions, such as no delay? I'm about to go shopping for a new hearing aid and quite excited to learn about the new options available.
Telecoil is certainly an option in a number of our hearing aids. Not every hearing aid has a telecoil, so if that's important to you, it would be something that I would bring up at during the discussion with your hearing care professional. We do have telecoil options in our receiver in the ear hearing aids, in our BTE hearing aids, and in our custom hearing aids. In terms of differentiation between smartphone use, Apple or Android, there are some differences that are present. There's a little bit more control of the hearing aid built into the actual operating system of the Apple product. However, with Apple and Android, you can do the audio streaming of phone calls, music, or video, and you can download and use the app within both systems. It's not every Android phone that is compatible for streaming, but it is the case for Apple. It's just about every iPhone or iPad.
Thank you. And I don't often share which technology I use, but I do able to stream using both of my implants and my hearing aid. And personally, I've seen a phenomenal change in my ability to be able to appreciate music, to use the phone, and so many other things the last few months since I've upgraded to be able to be bilateral, because I do use an implant and a hearing aid.
Excellent.
That's all the time we have for today. I really want to thank everyone for taking time out of their busy schedule to join us. And thank you, Willem, for your time and for this excellent presentation. Stay tuned, everyone. This webinar will be posted on our website in the next few days for future playback. And I hope everyone has a great weekend, and stay tuned for a number of other webinars that will be coming to you by CHHA in the near future. Have a great weekend and keep safe.
Thank you. Take care, everybody.